Hi, Vikas.
Hi, Pooja. I am also appearing as
Oh,
Vipina.
we can rename ourselves. We have that option on the right side. If you can just click on the three dots.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Hmm.
You have made all of the changes to the settings.
I did. Yeah. The polls are also ready. And the survey regarding the discovery call is also ready. So that can go out as in two ways. One, as a poll, right at the end. Second, it can also go out as a survey. So what happens in a survey is that once they drop off from this call on the screen that comes after they end the meeting,
Hmm.
that's where the survey comes. And they
Hmm.
also get it in an email from Zoom.
Hmm. What about the poll? Poll is only available here.
Poll is only available here. Yeah.
Okay, then let's do the survey.
Yeah. But because your
Okay.
voice is not clear.
Now, is it better?
Better. Yeah.
Yeah. So I am saying let's do the survey then.
Hmm.
Nitish, वो दो slides ऐड कर पाया था?
हाँ कर दिया विकास ऑलरेडी।
दिखा देना एक बार. Pooja, we have those polls ready.
ये रहा
Yeah.
दिस इज द
Yeah.
फर्स्ट वन।
So once he comes on the screen, I'll launch the poll. I already saved it. If you can go to the poll section
I can
at the
see
bottom.
poll
Huh.
1, poll 2, and discovery call.
Yeah.
So the moment you click launch,
It'll come on screen. Yeah.
okay, I'm not launching it. I don't know if we'll be able to launch again later.
Yeah. Let's not do that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll do it at the right time. Yeah.
sure. Okay.
Is the discovery call question okay, Vikas? Quickly, can you check and tell me? I said yes, no, sometime later. Has three options.
Should I try editing it and see? Would you be interested in a discovery call?
We can edit it here.
Yes.
Yeah. You can do it.
So I would be just keep running through the presentation, right? It is not going to be anyways an interactive because of one way broadcast, right?
Yes. It is a one-way broadcast. There will be
Yeah.
some questions that will be coming in, Nitish.
Yeah.
I think we have a few attendees already. So, yeah.
Pooja, are you making any of these poll questions as required?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I don't see that as a setting. Huh?
No, it's there at the back end. I see it. Okay. I think we have a few attendees on the call. Yeah.
So let me know when to start.
Yes. I'll just do a quick introduction, Nitish, once everyone's here, and then I'll hand it over to you. Uh, so to those of you who have already joined, welcome to this webinar session. Just allow us a few more minutes while we wait for others to join, and then we can get started.
I think we can start. Yeah.
Okay. Very good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to have you here for this exclusive session on freight cost optimization. We know how critical this topic is right now. Logistics and supply chain leaders are under immense pressure to reduce costs, without disrupting service levels. And today's session is exactly about tackling that particular challenge. Over the next 1 hour, we'll be walking you through practical strategies and tactics that leading enterprises are already using to achieve the 5 to 9% savings in freight costs while keeping their networks resilient and reliable. So before we get started, just a quick note, feel free to drop in any questions in the Q&A section at any point of time during the session. We'll make sure they get addressed either during the session or towards the end in our dedicated Q&A time. So now let me introduce Nitish Rai, who is the founder and CEO of FreightFox. He's a manufacturing industry veteran with nearly 18 years of experience at Kirloskar, Thermax, and Fortum. He's passionate about solving real-world logistics challenges, and before founding FreightFox, he scaled Odchalo and launched its defense logistics arm, Black Trunk Logistics. He now leads FreightFox in building a data-driven logistics platform for Indian manufacturers. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Nitish, to take us through today's session. Over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Pooja, and thank you for the kind words. Good morning, everyone. Usually, freight conversations tend to get a little boring, but we'll try to spice it up and also break some of the key assumptions you might have in this entire journey. So, before I start, there are some practical frameworks. There are some examples which are part of this. Feel free to drop in your questions. Also, if you want us to elaborate on anything, we will take it up at the end of the session as well. So let me get into the session and take you through what perspectives basically shape up the optimization approach and the entire thought process. To begin with, it's a good day to start when we look at this. Had it been evening, would it be even better actually? But this is popularly known as bail for those who are not from the region and may not know what is this. So this basically looks similar, and it is made up of similar ingredients, which is onion and all the basic peanuts and all the ingredients which are there. But we all know that we all like to taste it with our own flavors, with our own, I would say, inclination and with our own interest. There is something which is very similar with the transportation as well. Although it all looks like trucks moving around us, but it is not really the same when it comes to the operations. And that is where the story unfolds. And that's how we will see it in the coming slides as well. So before I even get into what optimization levers we use or where the optimization would come from, I think this single triangle, which I have called as Bermuda Triangle, because this probably explains the mindset of a logistics manager or logistics leader or a supply chain leader in any manufacturing organization. Where to understand simply, you will see that we are on a daily basis on the phone calls or in meetings. Discussing about the plans which are not keeping up or the dispatches which are getting delayed. Ultimately, as we say that logistics is all about planning what is going to happen and then end up justifying why it didn't. And that is where when we look at the failed plans and budgets, where the expectation versus reality mismatches or rubber meets the road, we get into relentless justification in the organizations. As the justification is happening, our ecosystem and our collaborating teams like sales, business development, and other teams are mounting pressure for doing the business, and that is where the operational friction starts to kick in. And when we are not able to match up or keep up with the speed or expectations, the pressure of accountability rises. All of this is a Bermuda Triangle for a supply chain leader today, given the disruptions which have become a new norm right now. Further diving down, one of the important aspect to understand before we optimize our freight is to who we are, what are we chasing. So competitive priority, and remember this word, competitive priority is a simple word to begin with. You all would be talking a lot about competitive advantage in your respective organizations, but competitive advantage is an outcome and competitive priority is a spirit, basically, so which is experienced by everybody. Now, competitive priority is that one strategic lever in your logistics and supply chain which you really want to go after. What you need to understand very clearly is, are you Amazon, are you Ambuja? I have taken just two examples, but you can see it's a spectrum basically which is there. Because if you're Amazon, I've written plus cost, plus cost, plus cost, because we all know cost is everywhere spoken about. But what's along with the cost? So for example, for Amazon, it is always service plus cost, because customer promise date, CPD, is the North Star the entire chain is chasing. Ambuja Cement, on the other hand, is an example. And when I say Ambuja Cement, not really the brand, but the cement as a sector, capacity plus cost becomes very important, because we need to have larger weight per shipment in order to abate for the higher logistic cost in the sector and make it more reachable to the larger geographies which are there. When we look at Zepto, we all would be ordering it more or less Zepto, Blinkit, or any of that similar brands, where along with the cost, speed matters, because we need to ultimately deliver something in 10 minutes time, which is there. So what's our competitive priority? It is very important that as an organization, as a supply chain, we establish our competitive priority. So the business competitive priority, supply chain's competitive priority, and logistics competitive priority must align together. Now, once we have, or we know that what's the competitive priority which is coming in, this looks a little heavy. So I'll just use a little bit of drawing here. May not be very good, but we look at two aspects when we look at logistics actually. One is how well we know about ourselves. So how well we know our own internal operations. When I say internal operations, it basically means what are the month-end dispatches pressure which we get, what are the new lanes which we suddenly come up beyond the contracts, etc. Surprises and the constants which are there. Similarly, how well we know the market, and remember, transportation and logistics and freight is a regional phenomenon, and the multiple regions interact with each other in order to give rise to our stress, what we know as freight escalations or placement failures or trucks not getting in, etc. So how well we know the market is the other dimension which is there. Now, how well we know the market drives the commercial optimization aspect basically. Now, when we say commercial optimization, we all are experts into it, sitting across the table and telling the transport partner to reduce the price because of X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3 reasons, right? That's commercial optimization. The strategic freight procurement, which we conduct on an annual basis, basically delivers the consistent this commercial optimization part. Whereas when we look at the internal processes or internal operations awareness, that basically results into technical optimization aspect, where we talk about network optimization, nodal efficiencies, speed in the network, etc. Now, these two junctions are very important for us to understand, because as an organization, and you have to do the honest assessment, we could be high on internal control or low on internal understanding or awareness. We could be, as an organization, very high on market awareness or low on the market awareness. Depending on where you are, and the honest self-assessment is required, the right approach or right as is form emerges. So for example, somebody who is having a very high awareness on internal operations and market both is a proactive master. They are already in the game actually. So they are using a lot of data. They are taking a lot of data-driven decisions. That's basically the characteristic of a proactive master, which is there. When we look at a situation where, let's say, our internal awareness is very high, but we are obscure about the market, we are opaque about the market which is there around us. And that is where we become a blinded optimizer. Now, a blinded optimizer is somebody who is able to optimize the network, but still will not be able to manage the disruptions which are coming from outside. So that's the kind of situation we'll be getting into. The worst case is when we are not aware about ourselves, in neither about market, where we are vulnerable victim. I'm sure none of us would be here. But we need to understand whether we are a reactive fighter, blinded optimizer, and what is the path we have to take. So if we are a vulnerable victim, if at all, we have to move to a reactive fighter first and then move to a proactive master. If we are a blinded optimizer, we have to move to proactive master. Ultimate goal is to actually reach and become somebody who can take very data-driven, objective decisions in this overall freight ecosystem. Now, what drives the behavior of the transportation cost? And from here, we starts to get into the levers of optimization as well. Is we define it as something called as PRISM. Why we name it as PRISM is pattern, regularity, impact on spend management. Because a white light seen by a naked eye is a white light, but when it passes through a prism, it shows its spectrum. And freight is exactly like that. It is once it passes through a right prism. So prism, you can imagine it like a data prism, for example. When it passes through that, it starts to show up its true colors in terms of bands, what exist within that white light, what we see. The important aspects which we go deeper in this are, to begin with, our internal factors, external factors, as we said, and hybrid factor, which is very, very important. When we say internal factors, consistency in the network, we will be defining it in the coming slides, so I'll not spend a lot of time here, but consistency in the network is one of the very key aspects when we look at the pattern regularity in the spend management. It impacts our freight spend budget divergences to a large extent. Similarly, skewness in our network is the second factor which is there. Now, skewness is basically, in a very simple words, this also we'll cover in detail, but it is in simpler words. It's the month end phenomena you can imagine, or seasonality phenomena, which basically skews the overall dispatches which are there. These are internal factors. Why I said internal factors? Because they are a function of a very thorough planning and forecasting S&OP which is there. It's an outcome of that actually, which is there. Obviously, market factors are there, but it is largely in control if we have the right data here. The second is the hybrid factor, which is the zero-based costing. Now, when we say zero-based costing, we will again dive down in the coming slides in the session. But why I have said it is internal plus external factors. Imagine a truck arriving at your factory and waiting there for 2 days to pick up the load. So loading point detention. And then let's say waiting another 2 days at your warehouse to unload. 2 days unloading point detention. 4 days are lost in idling. Therefore, the utilization of the truck in the network is overall coming down, because of which your base cost goes up. That is why it is dependent on internal factor. Similarly, imagine that monsoon, the roads are bad, and let's say we are traveling from Pune to Guwahati, where in summers it might take, let's say, about 6 days transit, 7 days transit. In monsoon, it translates to 9 days transit. That becomes an external factor. So it's a combination of internal and external factor which is there. And ultimately the market disruption. So remember, freight capacity is like money in our wallet. It is also chasing where to get to, where it get maximum returns actually. Similarly, the moment there is an agri season coming in, you suddenly see open trucks are getting vanished from the market to get the cash business. When you see there is suddenly Amazon big billion day sale, suddenly the 32 feet single XL, multi XLs are not available in the market because they are playing on those e-commerce networks. Now, all these factors become the part and parcel of market disruptions which are there. Today, in the session, we will be touching upon consistency, skewness, zero-based costing, and market disruptions as a case studies to demonstrate you that how it impacts the spend and the profile completely. Coming to consistency, this looks a little busy, but let me take you through what it means basically. Now, consistency is, you can imagine, if I give a contemporary example, it is like Salman Khan. Are you a Salman Khan or not? Where you say, एक बार मैंने जो commitment कर दी, so whether you adhere it or not. So when we say commitment, it means what? It means, let's say we contracted about 20 trucks per month capacity, for example, right? So what line you see, the wavy line which is going in, is the actual placement of trucks demanded by a, let's say, by a organization. And we contracted at, let's say, lower capacity, which is 20 trucks per month. Now, what happens is when we go through this kind of a cycle, which is, let's say, transport partner 1, where the transport partner is observing the deviation from, let's say, a 25th percentile of 10 trucks to a 75th percentile of about 40 trucks, the variation it is supposed to handle of 30 trucks on month is very steep actually. The transport partner will not be able to engineer its network better, and therefore you may observe placement failures, or you may observe cost escalations which are coming your way, right? So it's very important that we are able to get a very clear and credible forecast of what we are going to need over a month during a execution cycle. Similarly, imagine that if you have contracted a higher capacity, which is 45 trucks, but you are placing sets at 15 trucks, 11 trucks, 18 trucks demanding, again you are creating an imbalance in the network. So now consistency becomes a key in order to define. Now, once the transport partners in your ecosystem understand that you are an inconsistent network, they start to load the cost on top of their base cost in order to absorb for these variations. That some months they will probably end up placing a lot of trucks, some months they will not be even able to balance the capacities. So they will start cushioning for all these costs into your network. On the other hand, if you see you contracted for 45 trucks and you are ranging between 41 or 40 to 45 trucks, very, very consistent planning and forecasting, the transport partner too is able to engineer its network better, balance its capacity better, deploy its capacity better. Therefore, their costs are lower, their utilizations are better, and they have to handle a relatively lower variation, which is of just plus or minus, let's say 5 trucks as an example, and therefore they are able to provide you a better cost. Now, whether to be in this situation or whether to be in this situation is really our choice. How well we are able to credibly carve out our trucking forecast for while doing the annual contracts is one of the critical aspects of avoiding this kind of a problem, or at least minimizing this kind of a challenge which is there. What are the factors which you should be tracking in your network in order to understand consistency? And there is a plethora of metrics which I have written here. You may choose or you may selectively choose any one of these metrics. For example, the simpler one to begin with is average monthly volume. You can always look at that. We contracted a capacity of 20, but our average monthly volume is coming to 40. Therefore, the monthly volatility is very, very high, right? So that's an sample. You can also follow coefficient of variance or variation, which is there, where the formula is simpler, which is mentioned here, but this also gives you a variability band. Now, a good part or a best practice would be to actually segment your network from primary, secondary network perspective or inbound or outbound perspective to understand that, and then obviously short haul, long haul, or intrastate, interstate to see where these coefficient of variations are changing actually. Are these similar across the network or they are different across the segment of different networks which are there? You can also go for contracted fulfillment rate. See, we all are very, very happy measuring the OTIF performance of our transport partners. On the similar side, we can also measure something called as contract fulfillment rate, where we see that are we able to adhere to what we have committed or not. Now, this is very, very important because it all impacts and ultimately rolls up into your base costs which are there. You can also look at peak to average ratio around 12 months horizon. Now, peak to average ratio will tell you the spikes which your network is creating. And this again, you can look at in various components of your network to understand if it is uniform across the network, or is it more in certain corridors, certain states, or certain profiles of the network which are there. Similarly, you can use volume range as well. These are all suggestions which are there, but we have to see for a specific network. For example, for a FMCG network, the CFR, the contract fulfillment rate, could work very well. For the steel industry, the coefficient of variation might work really well. For example, for a seasonal industry like beverages, peak to average ratio might work really well. So we need to understand which of these metric fits in well, or you can do all and then interpret as well. So that's the way to look at it. When we look at the next factor, which I spoke about, which was skewness, if you remember in the earlier slide. Now, skewness is a very interesting phenomena. What skewness is, and we all know about this. Here you see 3 lines which are there. The first line, which is the orange color line, is the cumulative demand over a month by us. So this is us as in the manufacturing organization. The market cumulative demand, the blue line basically demonstrates what market is demanding, because everybody is trying to dispatch at the last 5 days, 6 days, 7 days. So market is also demanding, right? And the red line basically shows on the refer the right hand side of the y-axis, shows the freight rate indexed actually for a given truck type, which is there as an example. Now, what you see here is an example of a real example of a customer which is basically into agri business and has to lift a lot of agri product during the season. Now, what happens is as the month reaches the month end, our demand, marginal demand goes up. So when we say marginal demand, it means the incremental demand per day is getting steeper and steeper. This is where the challenge comes. The market is also getting steeper and steeper. Now, if the market peak and your peak is, let's say, is in the range of, or a range bound similar, let's say plus or minus 20-30%, suddenly you will observe that the capacities which you have start to drift towards the market to a more attractive agri product pickup or a different industry which is giving better rates. In case where our peaks are not really peaking with the market. So for example, we are, let's say from the compared to market peak, we are, for example, 40% lower, right? Now here, although we will face some challenges, we may face some challenges, but it won't be resulting into any major disruptions or freight escalations which are there, right? That is where you will see wherever the peak is lower than the market peak, the freight rates are stabilized. They are between, let's say, 3 rupees per ton kilometer plus or minus a range bound. Whereas where you see the peak behavior is very, very different, the distortion of freight is also very, very high, right? Now that is how skewness in our network basically again distorts the kind of freight spend or the budgets we do. It also, so consistency and skewness are the major killers of your contract adherences as well. So whether a contract holds good or not depends on a lot of factors, but consistency and skewness is two internal factors which we control, which has a huge impact on the overall deliverability or I would say the efficacy of contract which is there. Similar to consistency, you can measure skewness in your network through some of the parameters, as I said. So for example, what is the average daily volume? If you remember there, it was average monthly volume. Here it is average daily volume because we are looking at the marginal demand rise, which is happening across, let's say, a particular lane. Same principle goes here also. You will have to see that do you have the right segmentation in the network, primary, secondary, outbound, inbound, whatever you want to measure it on, intrastate, interstate, as you want. Coefficient of variation, similar to that, again based on day or day-to-day basis. Peak to average ratio, it tells you that, okay, what are the daily peaks we are getting and what to do. Remember, these are not just the metric, they drive the structure of the contracts, which we'll take up at the end of the session, which basically suits what kind of operation we are in. Then are we observing demand concentration? So for example, date to ship 32 trucks, that's an example. But you see severe back-end loading which is happening, or 80% volume shipped in just 20% of the months. These are all the category or I would say characteristics which would be exhibited in a skewness driven network which will be there. We can also look at average lead time index, which is LTI, which is average pickup date minus indent date. Indent, if you're using, it's a request for placement over emails or TMS, howsoever you are placing. So what's that? That's also basically a indicator where if you have a lot of short notice, where you are always saying urgent, 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 and urgency is a very frequent phenomena, then that also basically indicates that there is a skewness characteristic which is in the network, which can distort the freight profile of the or the spend in the network completely. Now we understood this. As FreightFox, we very well anchor our observations in the ground up, I would say, analysis as well. I'm going to share with you a very interesting insight from about 29 national fleet operators, which we interacted with as a kind of sentiment analysis to understand what they have to say about our hypothesis. So what I shown you is not an outcome of theoretical framework, but what we have understood from the ground up actually. So to begin with, let us make it interesting. There is a question. Before I answer it, I would like you to read this. So what do you think our transport partners would be preferring? A consistent low margin business or a non-consistent high margin business? So let's open the poll and see what you feel is the right. I think Pooja, it's a different quiz which has come up.
Sorry, my bad. Just a sec.
So just give us a moment. There'll be a quick poll. This would be interesting for you to share your views and then see that it really matches with the ground or what the ground says. do share your thoughts so that we will disclose on the coming slides what's the market looks like or
Yeah.
sensing like.
I think we got about 8 responses. We'll wait for a minute, maybe.
Sure. Let me know, Pooja, when we can go to the
Yes.
next slides. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, is everyone done answering the poll? We'll just take another 10 seconds and then we can close it. Okay.
And I think we have the answers.
Yeah, I'll just end the poll right now. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's see what market says, and you all would have understood with low margins. I think most of you are going to be right here.
Yeah, looks like.
So 96.6% transport partners said what you said. So we all know, at least on the heart of the heart, we know what matters basically ultimately. Now it is all about taking that wisdom out, converting it into data, understanding the decisions we need to take to make it right. That's the only difference or the only journey we have to do. Let's look at some of the new and interesting aspects as well. We also understood that are they planning to purchase new trucks or are they planning to add capacities? The transporter ecosystem looks very, very bullish about the capacity addition right now, with about, I would say, a little over around close to about 40-45% are definitely a yes, but a lot of them are also, so I would say almost about 60-70% market is fairly convinced that the capacity addition would be there in terms of new trucks, and very few are saying that it may not be there. Similarly, if we also understood with all these transport partners, and this is a resultant of a lot of structured conversation with them, that if a long-term business is committed, would they be willing to provide aggressive freight or not? Now, when we say aggressive freight, it is subjective. Aggressive freight does not mean that it is going to be doing business at losses, but would they be willing to come up with something which is really best on their end? The answer is again unanimously yes, that if they get the right commitment. And when we say commitment, it is not about annual volume. I would like to emphasize on that fact that it is more about consistency, which we did in the first question or we understood earlier as well. Similarly, when we ask that what are the additional support you expect from the manufacturing customers or the shippers which are there, you see that is again unanimously there are two things which emerge, which is payment terms and good planning. Now, payment terms obviously may or may not be something which would be in our control really. But then the good planning part, what they intend and mean is that can the networks work with them to lower the detentions and do not use the trucks as warehouses. Now that is where the entire value proposition comes in from their side as well. So that's their side of story, which is important. So before we go to the next section, let's do another very quick one, because all of us are talking about strategic freight procurement. What do you think, which is a month when they prefer, when the most of the logistic service providers or transport partner prefer to go with the new contract capacities? You have to choose between January to December, 1 month to understand. And we all runs in different cycle. I understand financial year, calendar year, or maybe Q3 kind of cycles. But let's see what transport partner prefers or the ecosystem prefers to get in the contract cycles. So I'll give it a minute probably. Pooja, let me know once it's done.
Yes, Nitish, the poll is up. Yeah. Okay, we'll have it on for another 10 seconds if the rest of you can also answer.
Webinar is a one-way dialogue. This is the only way to interact. So please participate, and the responses would be only a reflection of what we think versus what market thinks.
Yeah. Okay, we got 11 responses so far. I'm just going to wait for another 5 seconds. Yeah.
Polls are a very interesting phenomena. We like polls in India only to talk about it, but participation is lower usually.
All right, I'm just going to end the poll. Yeah. These are the results.
Oh, great. So a lot of us are saying March, April. So financial year pin down is very, very clear. August looks like somebody is also stating that just before the happening of or the preparation of festive season probably, or August is a lean season probably, the rains and all could be a good time. But let's see what transport partners have to say again on this.
Surprisingly, there are two votes on October as well, which is the peak festive season.
Oh, great. So we have October as well. I could not see that. Very, very interesting. So superb. So you see the transport partner or logistics service providers ecosystem prefers if they have a clear visibility to enter new contracts in the month of January. It is very, very unanimous compared to any other months. Actually, if you see more than 50% clearly say that the new capacity or the new contracts, the good time to start new contracts is the month of January, basically, which is there. Again, it depends on what commodity, specific industry, etc. This was done specifically across FMCG, automotive, and I would say chemical kind of industry combinations. But you can also look at your specifics as well. What's important is the question to you is that when it was the last time when you really understood the sentiment of your transport partners. When was the last time you did a structured study or understanding of their sentiment, that what means to them, what worries them, what gives them anxiety? Are we really aware of that or not? Or we only say when the khatre ka nishan is visible, which is basically the festive season, peak behaviors or seasonality? That's a question I would like to keep you with, and please ponder over it. As we move forward, the another very interesting phenomena we keep on hearing and consisting and benchmarking, zero-based costing is very, very important critical aspect of the freight sourcing, freight procurement. However, what we tend to do is when we assume zero-based costing, we like to see this picture. Now, I hope all of you know this MRI. I also wish none of us gets into it, but then that's a machine which is very important. So when we look at zero-based costing, it looks like this to us in most of the cases, because we are, as human beings, we do not want cognitive load on our mind. Therefore, we want to simplify things, which is good, but then not every time simplification is good. Remember Bhel, had it been simple, it won't be tasty, right? So if you look at zero-based costing, it is not just about just getting tire maintenance, etc., and then doing a calculation and reaching there. Actually, zero-based costing somewhat looks like this. When you go deeper, one level deeper, you understand that what are the cogs in action which are actually causing the cost elements to come up. How to approach zero-based costing is a very large subject in itself. Do share your preferences. If you want a larger discussion on this, we'll be happy to schedule a session on this. But when we look at the zero-based construct, or we call it as truckonomics in the FreightFox language, we need to understand what are the cost, I would say, buildups which are happening in the network. So, for example, the truck basically would have cost while it is moving or while it is not moving, or moving either ways, which is the common cost elements. Now, in that, we can have distance dominant cost or distance driven cost. For example, fuel, toll, AdBlue, on-road cost, driver RTO, maintenance, etc. All these things are part and parcel of distance driven cost, right? There is time driven cost, which is also there, which is daily bhatta, utilization or truck idling or insurance, etc., which is going on as a cost even if it is idling. If you look at long haul trucking, for example, 900 kilometers or above in India, typically distance based costs dominate the pricing behavior. If you look at less than 300 kilometer placements in India, typically you will find time based costs are dominating the pricing behavior. Apart from this, there are distance driven cost, whether the truck is in use or not in use, whatever is there, which is lubricant, tire, spare, schedule maintenance. Similarly, the time driven cost by a large transport operator, which is administrative, GST, insurance, credit cost, borrowing cost, fleet replenishment, depreciation, all part and parcel of this. So we need to go deeper into aspects of what is, so for the short haul, what our ZBC construct looks like. For our mid hauls or intrastate, what our construct looks like. For long haul, what construct looks like. I'll give you a glimpse of it very clearly in the coming slide as well for you to understand. So look at this. This is a typical 14 chakka gadi, 14 tire vehicle as we call it in India. What you are seeing on the screen here on the x-axis is basically variable cost construct, or we call it as variable cost percentage. So out of the total freight cost for a typical, I would say, contract, what percentage of this is a variable cost based on the run which is there. What you see here on this y-axis is rupees per kilometer. You will be able to observe the asymptotic tendency. Asymptotic is a mathematical word, simply saying that how it varies. So look at the difference when, if the variable cost is at around 20%, you can easily see that the rupees per kilometer for a 14 tire truck could be as high as 250 rupees per kilometer. Typically a short haul tendency which will be there. The moment it reaches, let's say, a 40% level, you will observe it drops to almost about 80 rupees kilometer, typically kind of a number. Exactly, it may be plus or minus 2-3 rupees here and there. But from 20% to 40%, which is basically a 20% increase of variable cost construct, look at the impact on the per kilometer basis which is there. What we need to understand in our network is that, let's say if we are a long haul dominant network, then our profile of variable cost construct or benchmarking the variable cost construct with the market. So here comes the question. You do not really benchmark the freight rates which are there, but you really look at variable cost percentage in your freight contracts to understand that transport partner, particularly for your network, is loading what kinds of other costs which are hidden or which are implicit. I would not call the word hidden, but it is a result of consistency, skewness, and other parts which are there. So that's an example of 14 tire vehicle variable cost characteristics which are there. You can actually build this profile for anything, but it would be specific to your network, specific to your operation. It's like a shoe. One shoe doesn't fit all. So this needs to be done for your network specific attributes. So if we move on from here, I would just give me a moment. Yeah, sorry. So once we look, the next part is when we look at now the long haul or the mid haul or the short haul. This shows the variable cost construct as an aggregate level for a 14 tire truck, for example, right? Now, what you typically observe for a long haul, or greater than 900 kilometer distance, the variable cost mean or average is about 40%. For the intrastate or kind of 300 to 900 distance, it is roughly at the range of around 30, 32, 33%. For the short haul, it drops to almost about 8 to 10%, 11% levels. Now, this spread again is very, very important for you to know for your network specifically, because this spread defines where are the opportunities in order to create efficiencies via commercial or technical optimization to achieve this. And further drill down, and I'll not get into details of it, you can get into vehicle level as well. So for the long haul trucking, what is the variable cost behavior exhibited by your 12 chakka, 14 chakka, 16 chakka, 18 chakka or 22 chakka gadi? Or you may have 32 feet single axle, multi axle, whatever vehicle you are using. So what is that detail is also something very important. Once you pin down this is where you start to get that what is actually cushioning your freight cost and what are the levers which can be used to eliminate those cushions in order to achieve the highest level of, I would say, efficiency in the contracting and therefore the optimization which we are talking about. In terms of market distortion as another factor which we spoke about, what you see here is a very interesting, I would say again, a real-time data phenomena where the chart above shows the onion prices. So red color shows prices of onion in Maharashtra market, blue shows Madhya Pradesh, and green shows prices in Uttar Pradesh, right? Similarly, potato, another commodity, you see the red shows prices in Maharashtra, blue shows MP, and green shows UP. With that, I'll just demonstrate with a quick example to you. Look at the prices which are potato prices which are available in Maharashtra. It is averaging very high at around 2,500, 3,000 rupees, which is there, right? Now, the differential of price here, and look at the potato price which is in UP, which is trending. Now, because UP is a producer and Maharashtra is showing a better prices, the transport partners would like to immediately move from this market to this market with the large capacities, right? Suddenly, the demand of trucks, open trucks, 16 chakka, 16 tire or 14 tire or 18 tire would increase here. Similar happens when it is about onion. So look at the onion prices. If the onion prices, sorry, I draw it reverse. The potato prices are here. So it moves from here to this market. Onion moves from this to this market. That's the. So the differential price in the commodity basically is disrupting the freight capacity flow across the markets, is what I'm trying to emphasize on this slide. So if you see, the more is the differential. So imagine if there is a 2x differential, that potato is available at 2000 rupees in Agra and potato is available with 4000 rupees in, let's say, Pune. Suddenly you will see there is a large flow of volume which is coming in, and therefore you will face the shortage of it if you are at the other end of it. Similarly, if you see suddenly the onion prices rising in the northern part of the country because of weather or monsoon, you will again observe that the flow again changes or reverses. Thereby, the preference of transport partners keep on shifting. Why I am giving this example is we should very clearly scout for these market disruptions in order to see that we are not falling vulnerable to this. That's the essence of it. It's a very hot topic, so I just added a quick slide here, but just to give you a glimpse of it, we all are talking about GST 2.0 very actively. And GST 2.0, it is very critical for us to assess the impact at a lane level. Now, impact of GST 2.0 on short haul lanes you are operating, on dedicated vehicles you are operating, on long haul lanes you are operating is going to be very different. For example, I have taken a Nagpur Ankleshwar 30 metric ton truck example here, which is operating 6,321 kilometers per month as an average utilization. You see there is a potential of reduction of 1.69% of the freight rate because of GST 2.0 impact, which is going to be there. Now this varies. The structure should be very clear to you. If you know your ZBC well, if you know your baseline well, you will be able to understand that what's the impact at the ground level for the GST 2.0, which is going to come in. That's another example for you. Coming to one of the favorite topics, which we say that reverse auctions are the answers to every question. The simple answer is no. If this is your strategy, then you ideally do not have any strategy, because reverse auctions are an outcome, or they are a tool which is used after running all these analysis in order to understand where it fits in or where it doesn't actually. So reverse auction fits in. I will not again complex it a lot, but if we have low skewness in the network and if we have low consistency, we have reverse auction as a very, very good lever where the alternate pool discovery prevails. So the more transport partners we can gather for this kind of a network, the better they will fight, because it's a consistent, non-skewed business. They would love to have it. The moment we get into a part of the network where the consistency is low, skewness is low, we need to get into flexible capacity agreements. I will explain this in probably follow-up webinars about this. But what I wanted to say, similarly, you have collaborative partnering or operational premium models which you have to deploy depending on what sort of network you are operating, what challenges you are facing. It's a diagnostic tool for that. But just to emphasize on the fact that the reverse auctions should not be used as a general tool of price discovery, because whatever price you discover, you will end up not realizing that over a period of contracts in terms of contract failures, budget slippages, because of the aspects which we just understood or explained. The key takeaways before I just get to the last point of the webinar is that we all are playing into three junctions which are very, very important. We are constantly looking at capacity and market conditions, as I explained. We have to do strategic freight sourcing because the business must go on and we must grow. And the seasonality and sporadic events which are not in our hand. Outside of India, it is geopolitical. Within India, these could be elections, monsoons, weather, consumption, whatever is there. But we always will be at a triangle of relatively planned things, relatively unplanned things, and disruptions which are there. And that is where the real world is. Now, if we can get to the real world, see the real world, reflect upon it with more and more data and closeness, the better we'll be prepared as a resilient network to deliver the optimization and also realize it, not just procure it, but also realize it. And that's where I see that, do we know all the layers of our onion or not? That's a question to all of you again. That do we know, have we unpeeled all the layers of our own operations? Have I understood better and then also understood the market in order to propagate it? Remember, the internal operations awareness and the external market awareness both equally contribute to the effective freight procurement and the realization of value which is there. So with that, I reach the end of the slide, and I thank you all for listening so patiently. And I hope it was not a sleepy session, but a interesting and thought-provoking session for all of you. Over to Pooja.
Yes. Okay, so we'll have the session up for any questions. So the Q&A is open for you all. The chat is also open. So let's spend the next 10 minutes in case you all have any questions from the session today.
One of the comment that we had, and not really a question, was about how some of the e-commerce players actually offer almost very high utilization and but low to no margins or negative margins also in the networks.
Very, very well said, and good point out. The margins realization for that player would be negative, but because of utilization, they would be making overall positive